Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, New HR Manager Pisses Off Hardworking Employees. Mass Malicious Compliance. Years ago I worked for an awesome company that understood workplace culture and fun was a huge part in keeping employees happy and productive. In our office, people would often cycle to work and therefore needed to shower and get ready at work. That meant that sometimes they didn't get to their desk until after 9 a.m. However, nearly everyone worked back without being asked to deliver on deadlines. Management didn't care because they knew the work was being done and everyone always went over and above. Enter new HR manager. We had never really had one before but were growing, so needed one. Within her first few weeks she sent out an email saying that everyone needed to be seated and ready to go at 9 a.m. and that we needed to stop having social chats and getting ready at work, or if we did, do it earlier. She never acknowledged the fact that everyone put in unpaid overtime. Cue mass malicious compliance. Everyone would start at 9 a.m. as per email and then leave at 5 p.m. Projects started running behind and clients started getting upset because their product was not being delivered on time. New HR manager was confused as to why work was not being delivered on time anymore. People were starting on time. She made sure of it. Needless to say, upper management removed the rule and she quit shortly after. We all went back to our normal ways and would you know it, projects were back on track. Don't walk into a new company and try to change something that isn't broken. The people will revolt. Edit. I want to clarify that OT was never expected or forced upon us, but due to awesome management, cool projects and great perks we didn't mind when we did do it. Next one is titled, I don't work here, lady, but yeah, I'll be your server. This happened to a friend of mine, who I shall call Steve, although that isn't his real name. Steve works in a hardware, DIY store in a retail park, where are loads of shops and restaurants surrounded by a large car park. He has a lunch break at about 1 p.m. every day for an hour, during which time he normally gets a sandwich or something quick, simple and cheap. On this particular day, back in 2017, he'd arranged to meet his girlfriend for lunch, at one of the nearby restaurants, and had even ordered the meal in advance, so weekends they arrived they'd be served pretty quickly. He'd been to the restaurant many times and knew the manager and the wait staff pretty well. Cast, Steve, Steve's girlfriend Sarah, not her real name, Karen, entitled customer, and the waiting staff. Steve and Sarah had finished their meal and paid the bill, and now Sarah had gone to the toilet, so Steve is just waiting for her. There are only a handful of customers at this time. Then Karen walks in with her kids. She spots an empty table next to Steve's table and notices that he is in a uniform. She sits down, gets her kids settled, while Steve is just staring out the window. Breaks over. Back to work, then, she yaps, clapping her hands together to get his attention. Steve panics, suddenly thinking that he's been there too long and he's actually late. He checks his watch and realizes that it's only 1:30, and he still has 30 minutes. Sorry, he says, I've got half an hour left on my break, and... But she cuts him off, saying with a raised voice, well, you can take my order and go back to your break. Hop to it. While aggressively swiping at him, but missing it, suddenly dawns on Steve that Karen thinks he works in the restaurant, and starts to explain that he doesn't work there, getting as far as, but I don't, before being cut off again. Karen shouts, I don't care if you don't work on your break, I want my order, now, and fails again to swipe at him. Cue malicious compliance. Steve carries a notepad and pen with him as they occasionally help him in his job. He whips these out, stands up and says, yeah, sure, why not? As he does this, he's gesturing to the wait staff to not come to the table for a minute or two, and they are giggling as they've worked out what he's up to. Even the manager, who's heard Karen shouting, has cottoned on, and is watching. Steve listens to Karen's order, while writing on his pad. Except he isn't writing her order, but a bunch of random words. At that moment, Sarah returns, stopping halfway to the table, and sees Steve is up to some shenanigans, and that the wait staff and at least a couple of customers are all watching. Steve finishes taking the order and turns around, intending to go back to his break and sit down, just to piss Karen off. But he sees Sarah and, instead, walks towards her. She already has her bag, and no jacket anyway, being as it is summer, and rather flamboyantly, says, "Are you ready to go, darling?" and proceeds to walk straight out the restaurant, turning around to see Karen, still sat down, staring daggers at him, and tears off her order from his pad, and throws it in the bin by the door. Unfortunately, that's where the story ends, so I don't know in detail how Karen reacted to that, but the wait staff said she went to the bin to dig out her order, shouted profanities at everyone, and left without ordering. Next one is titled, "I Want My On-Board Credit." This happened around 2012, when I was working in a travel agency call center. One of the major cruise lines was having an onboard credit (OBC) sale, where if you booked under a certain rate the cabin would come with OBC, $50 to $75 depending on the cabin type. It was typically one of the worst rates and you were paying way more than one of their other rates. It made for great ads, and got the phone ringing but rarely a good deal. During one of these sales, a woman calls in asking about the OBC sale. I talked to the lady and found out she qualified for one of the better rates that would save her $200 but wouldn't come with the $50 OBC. I was going over the offer and soon I mentioned the deal wouldn't come with OBC. She flipped out. "This is a bait and switch. I want my on-board credit. The ad said I get $50, I want my money." After a couple of tries trying to explain how she is spending $200 to get $50, and her having a meltdown about it, I gave up. Cue malicious compliance. I ended up booking her the more expensive rate. She got her $50 OBC but spent $200 to get it. I put a reminder in my calendar to check the booking the week of her sailing. She never got a price drop or anything, so she kept her crappy rate, but hey, at least she got $50. Next one is titled, "My How the Glass Tables Have Turned." This is how eBay lost its way. I used to sell things there weekly as a side hustle while my wife was a stay-at-home mum. My wife would find items at yard sales and flea markets etc., and we would list them on eBay. I listed a glass dining table as local pickup only. The words, "local pickup only," were all over the ad. Last second some guy 2,000 miles away overbids the local people by a few dollars. I told him local only and he said it didn't matter, he won. He would pay shipping, etc. etc. eBay wouldn't disclose second place bidder and sided with him, giving him all the power in this situation. He threatened to give me a bad review unless I shipped it, and offered me the princely sum of $20 to disassemble and deliver it to a UPS store where he had an account. "Just drop it off and they'll do the rest," he said. I had him send me a message saying he accepts all responsibility for damages in transit. Against my better judgment, I took the $20 and delivered it to a UPS store who was neither expecting nor equipped to package and ship it themselves. Apparently that's not a service they offered then. After informing the buyer, he said I just had to package it myself. After all, he had paid for this service. I almost lost my mind. UPS employees said he had a valid account so I could use whatever I wanted. Well, if you insist, I thought to myself. They saw what was up when I asked them what was the most expensive packing materials they have. On went several layers of bubble wrap, double-wall corrugated cardboard sheets. 2 layers of that just in case, cardboard corners all around, and a few rolls of the most expensive tape covering the whole thing. The package with the top was about 10 inches thick and the packing materials cost as much as the shipping did. In the end the employees were helping me wrap it after I told them what happened. We made a separate package for the legs, frame, and I marked the glass top with tons of fragile glass stickers and left the rest to them. I told them to document the package condition on delivery as this guy was a pain in the ass. It took well over an hour for this quick drop-off, easy $20. A couple days later I get this raging message on eBay about the shipping costs. I politely answered that he paid me to deliver it and use UPS materials to package it. A few days pass and he claims it was damaged due to improper shipping, packaging, and eBay sided with him, but would only refund it if he returned the item. I was laughing so hard at the thought of him shipping it back for $80 or whatever it cost. However, eBay's little mediation system decided to refund part of the cost to him and allowed him to keep the table. But not before he gave me a negative review which I couldn't get removed, only reply to. Then eBay removed my reply for being toxic or something. leaving him with a table he shouldn't have been able to buy, with half his purchase price refunded and me with a negative review that made me look like a crook. But being a spiteful, petty person, I wasn't done. I used 2 friends' eBay accounts and followed his listings closely. He was actually running a business on eBay selling furniture. I waited for 2 lower-priced items to go cheap within a week or so of each other and snipe a bid on them, one from each eBay account. I was super pleasant via messages and asked if I could call to arrange shipping. I had my friends pose as the buyers and give an address to a nursing home and community center for each item. They paid using their PayPal but made sure he used the address given via phone. Total investment was about $120. When I saw both packages had been delivered to the addresses I had given him, I asked him where the items were. He started getting freaked out when it was coming from 2 accounts with very similar situations. I told him the address was right there on PayPal, that's where it needed to go. Then I dropped 2 nasty reviews on his account, calling him a scammer and making claims he couldn't refute, kinda like he did to me. Eventually I got the money back for both purchases. He had 2 strikes on eBay as a scammer and I never used eBay again. Last time I looked on eBay it had more in common with Wish than the eBay I was using. Edit, funny how you feel like you're the only one getting screwed until you share your experience. Next one is titled, Every Staff Member Must Have a Name Badge. I worked as a supervisor for a frontline staffing company for trade shows. We worked for dozens of them and would register people, print name badges, check people in or sometimes just print tickets. Our staff was filled with retirees in their 70s and 80s and a handful of young actors and actresses who needed a side gig. It was minimum wage and as supervisor I got $1 more per hour. Normally we worked corporate shows but the company decided to expand their services to include consumer shows. One particular event was not communicated to our staff in advance. It was a sex and porn trade show. Booths full of sex toys, porn, erotica. It was very salacious and having made the trek out to the convention center, the older folk were embarrassed but decided to stay because they worked the door and not the inside event. For some reason, the show manager, a cocked-up control freak, insisted that each of them wear a name badge. I knew my staff would rather maintain their anonymity and requested that they remain discreet. We all had uniforms and were clearly employees. He insisted that every one of my staff had to have a name badge. Okay, each of them will have a name badge. I began printing them off for them. 83-year-old Gladys became Jenna Jameson, 78-year-old Stanley became John Holmes, 86-year-old Edith was Tracy Lords. I decided to become Ron Jeremy. The old folks had no idea who any of these people were, they were just happy to not have their own names. Attendees loved the name badges. The show manager was so cocked out it never even registered for him. Next one is titled, So You're the Manager of My Spare Time Now? I was employed at a small market radio station for many years a while back. I loved the actual work, but the people there were just terrible. Particularly the manager in this story. She spent 7 years pretending we were friends, working up from sales to sales manager and eventually station manager. And then one day she decided to make my job a completely miserable experience. Holding station meetings without me, creating recording sessions without putting them on my schedule, ignoring my reports of tech issues so things never got fixed. It was ridiculous how little managing she actually did. Basically there had been a build-up of her crap leading up to this story and this was the first real time I put my foot down. Since we were a small staff, and I was the employee with the most years, I had a lot of responsibilities. The easiest way of describing my job was I did everything except sell ads. Every day had the same main responsibilities but minor changes kept each day different. Punch in at 8 a.m. and co-host the final hour of the morning show, answer phones and the door all day, record ads and clients, edit shows, do the afternoon broadcast 1 to 5 p.m., pre-record the evening news block to air after I leave for the day. One day the morning show host decided we needed to talk about America's Got Talent. But by time he has this great idea auditions were already 3 shows in. I had never watched the show before because I absolutely hated reality TV. But I thought what could it hurt, and I went home that night to watch the week 4 episode. While it was entertaining, it was also an overly padded waste of time. But I did my homework and did the show the next morning and hyped it up like it was the greatest thing ever. Next week I forgot to watch. I go into work and the morning show host asks what I thought and I panic for a second before telling him I didn't see it. Since I had about 20 minutes of morning news before I was live, I ran to my office and checked YouTube for a highlight reel. And there it was. An hour-long TV show whittled down to a 15-minute video. Perfect. When it was done, I moved to the broadcast studio and did a great recap of last night's episode. Even the host, who watched the entire show, thought I did a great job keeping up with him. 6th episode came around and this time I remembered it was on, but since I knew NBC was going to post the highlights for me tomorrow, I opted to spend my free time on something that I actually wanted to do. Next morning I go straight to the highlight reel and get caught up on every act that was important enough to talk about. Again, the show host thought I did a great job. But my manager didn't think it was good enough. She called me into her office to ask why I was purposely ignoring requests to watch the show. I asked her what difference does it make whether I watch the hour-long broadcast full of commercials and long-winded filler to stretch the run time versus watching the highlight reel that has every high point and does the same job in 15 minutes. She said it makes a difference and wouldn't elaborate. She was always pulling that I'm right and I don't have to tell you why crap. She then pointed out that next week was when judges began cutting acts and there was going to be episodes every Tuesday and Wednesday for the rest of the broadcast and watching it was mandatory. How long are these episodes? I asked her. They're an hour each. And that's when I decided to put an end to this bullshit once and for all. So that's 2 hours of show prep each week. Do I mark that down on my timesheet as overtime or am I expected to cut out at 3 p.m. on Fridays so I don't go over my scheduled 40 hours? My manager's eyes bugged out like she never once expected me to demand payment for dictating how I spend my time outside of the office. I just stood there waiting to see if I was going to be making extra money or getting an early start to the weekend. Suddenly the 15-minute highlight reel during regular paid office hours was good enough. Funny how that works, eh? Next one is titled, No Overtime, and Report Actual Time Worked. Regional manager steps on my toes. Many years ago I was managing a company that was part of a national chain. We served customers all over the world with internet, phone, and we also had a high volume of walk-in customers on site. My regional manager made it clear to me that I was not to authorize any overtime. If a customer walked in or called in a few minutes before closing and would require an employee to work over 30 to 60 minutes to service the customer and make a sale, I would allow them to come in late the next day by the 30 or 60 minutes they had worked over the night before. I balanced the time every week with no overtime and reported regular hours on payroll. We were working a bi-monthly pay period. One day when I was off, the regional manager paid a surprise visit to the site I was managing. He had a meeting with all the employees in my absence and read them the riot act and demanded that all of them must report promptly in the morning at the start of their shift and leave in the same manner at the end of the shift. And they must report actual times on the handwritten time cards to the minute. My team reports this to me the following day, and we comply. We rack up a bunch of overtime over the next 2 weeks, with those that got caught up servicing customers at the end of the day after hours. After submitting the timesheets, the regional manager calls me and goes off on me about the overtime. It went like this. Room, what the hell is going on over there? I told you no overtime. This is unacceptable, I didn't authorize this. Me, did you visit my facility and have a meeting with my staff in my absence and demand that actual times must be reported and they have to be punctual and leave promptly? Room, yes I did. Me, I have been managing this by allowing people to work late and come in late to eliminate overtime and make sales. We close at 5 o'clock, we expect a sales rep to answer the phone at 4:59, work with the customer and make a sale. If a customer walks in at 4:59, we expect a sales rep to work with the customer and make a sale. This could take 15 minutes to an hour. I appreciate my staff doing this to service the customer, and we are now complying with your new rule to report actual times. You really shook up my staff on your last visit, and I cannot manage this anymore. Room, forget we had this conversation and go back to what you were doing. Next one is titled, You will work 9 to 5 so we can watch you. So at my first job I enjoyed the flexible work schedule, but because I was bored out of my mind I would do non-work things during work like everyone else in the department. I was singled out together with one other coworker and got told to work 9 to 5 instead of 8 to 4 as I did before, and boy we did. We would show up at no later than 9 o'clock even if we got there early, and would drop whatever we were doing at 5 p.m. exactly. This included walking out of meetings and straight up missing them. We knew we were being watched for non-work activities, so whenever there was nothing to do we started watching others for non-work activities, collecting evidence and reporting them. Soon enough it became obvious that they were targeting us because the others had friends in high places and didn't get in trouble for the same stuff. So we took it a step further and did exactly what our tasks described, but at a snail's pace so as to never not be working. They then threatened to fire us because our productivity was down and we were disrespectful, leaving meetings, snitching on people. We pointed them to the fact we were just doing as they said and they struggled to dispute it. The 9 to 5 was lifted, though I'm pretty sure the watching wasn't. I then managed to make sure I was essential to keep things running smoothly in my team, and then quit with enough paid time off left to just peace out. It felt glorious. Last one is titled, "You Want Me to Empty Out the Whole House?" Okay. This is not my story, it is my landlord's story. His wife and he are moving soon, and the buyers first wanted my landlord to leave the interior complete and they would pay him for it. A week ago they messaged him that they could get the same furniture cheaper online and they want all of my landlord's stuff gone by the time they move in. There is a lovely garden with lots of fauna which are kept of the paths by beautiful metal fences with curls and such. My landlord is complying, all the furniture will be gone, but the fences as well. The buyers will have to deal with plants running wild. As the buyers haven't been nice to me up until now, I am enjoying this. I also know that, as my current landlord is not very hygienic, that they will come across some surprises. Like the maggots underneath the doormats that I found while pet sitting. Thanks for listening.